In a remote corner of the country, deep within the ancient forest, there lay a small village called Tin Nghiem. Outsiders always avoided this place, haunted by whispered tales of darkness and curses dating back centuries. The villagers were quiet, their eyes clouded with fear, as if something terrifying lurked beneath the night's shadow. Hai, a young and ambitious journalist, did not believe in ghosts or superstitions, determined to uncover the truth. He traveled to Tin Nghiem to write an exposé that would clear the fog of fear surrounding the village. With his backpack and recording device, he arrived on a cold, rainy afternoon. The gloomy atmosphere was thick, the wind howled through the trees like sorrowful sighs from restless spirits. He sought out Old Lamb, the village's eldest resident and a living witness to the eerie legends. Old Lamb spoke of a righteous official who was wrongfully condemned centuries ago, a man who died full of pain and vengeance, cursing the village forever. At night, his ghost still roams, seeking justice for the injustice done to him, Lamb said, eyes filled with dread. That first night in his rented room, strange noises began to echo around Hai. Footsteps without source, whispers calling his name from the darkness. Though he tried to stay calm, his heartbeat quickened. And the air grew suffocating. Suddenly, his recorder switched on by itself, capturing unexplainable sounds. Then Hai saw it, a dark figure flickering outside the window, eyes cold and empty, staring at him as if trying to pull him into the abyss of untold secrets. The second night in Tin Nghiem was far worse than the first. Hai lay awake on the creaky wooden bed, the cold air seeping through cracks in the old walls. The darkness seemed alive, pressing in on him like a living thing. Suddenly, faint whispers drifted through the room, soft, unintelligible murmurs that sent chills down his spine. Curious but cautious, Hai switched on his recorder and whispered back, "Who's there?" The silence that followed was heavy, then a barely audible reply crackled through the device, "Justice." The single word hung in the air like a curse. Unable to resist, Hai stepped outside into the thick fog blanketing the village. The moon was hidden behind black clouds, and the trees swayed eerily, casting twisted shadows. As he walked toward the ancient well at the village center, the whispers grew louder, echoing from every direction. Suddenly the ground beneath him trembled, and a cold gust blew past, extinguishing his flashlight. In the pitch black, Hai's breath caught as he felt a presence brush past him, cold, invisible fingers grazing his skin. Panic surged, but something urged him forward. At the well he found a weathered scroll tied with a faded red ribbon. Hands trembling, he unrolled it. The parchment was covered with strange symbols, and a desperate plea: reveal the truth, or be trapped forever in the shadow of lies. The wind howled again, and from the darkness emerged a figure, not quite human, its eyes glowing with sorrow and rage. Hai barely escaped back to his room, heart pounding, realizing that the village's secrets were far darker and more dangerous than he had imagined. The next morning, the village seemed quieter than ever, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Hai sat at the small wooden table in his rented room. The ancient scroll laid out before him. He traced the strange symbols with his fingers, trying to decipher their meaning. Despite his rational mind, a cold knot of fear tightened in his stomach. Determined to find answers, Hai sought out Old Lamb again. The old man's face was pale, his hands trembling as Hai showed him the scroll. This is the mark of the forgotten curse," Lamb whispered, eyes darting nervously. "Long ago, when the innocent official was condemned. A powerful shaman cast a binding spell to keep the truth hidden and the spirits restless. Anyone who tries to uncover it risks being claimed by the shadows." Hai's mind raced. Could this curse explain the strange phenomena, the voices, the ghostly figure, the chilling presence in his room? But what truth was buried so deep that it must be protected by such darkness? That night, the village plunged into an unnatural silence. The usual chorus of crickets and frogs vanished, replaced by a heavy stillness that pressed on Hai's chest. As he lay in bed, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to twist and writhe, reaching toward him like black smoke. Suddenly, the door creaked open slowly on its own. A cold breeze swept in, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. From the doorway emerged a shadowy figure, the ghostly official, his face pale and eyes hollow but burning with a fierce sorrow. His voice echoed a haunting whisper: "Find the truth, break the curse, before it consumes us all." Frozen in terror, Hai watched as the apparition pointed toward the forest edge, where the oldest part of the village lay abandoned. Compelled by a mix of dread and curiosity, Hai knew he had no choice but to follow. Stepping into the darkness outside, the fog thickened and twisted into shapes, faces contorted in agony, hands reaching out, pleading silently. The deeper he went, the heavier the air became, until every breath felt like swallowing ice. At the heart of the forest, Hai found an ancient stone altar covered in moss and strange carvings, the place where the shaman had cast the curse centuries ago. As he approached, a cold voice whispered directly into his mind, "Turn back or join us." But Hai steeled himself. Holding the scroll tightly, he began to chant the incantations written on the parchment, hoping to unravel the curse that had haunted Tinh Nghiem for generations. Suddenly, ground trembled violently. Shadows erupted from the altar like smoke, swirling into terrifying forms. The forest seemed alive with fury and pain, the spirits crying out for release or revenge. Hai struggled to keep his voice steady, fighting the invisible force trying to silence him. Just as his strength waned, a blinding light burst from the scroll, piercing through the darkness. The spirits screamed, then slowly dissolved into the night air, leaving behind a heavy silence. Exhausted and shaken, Hai stumbled back toward the village, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. He knew the curse was not fully broken, but the truth was finally beginning to emerge from the shadows. The dawn brought little comfort. Though the shadows had dispersed and the first rays of sunlight filtered through the ancient trees, the village of Tinh Nghiem seemed different, quieter, heavier, as if it too was holding its breath. Hai's body ached from the night's ordeal. But his mind was restless, racing with questions. What exactly had he just witnessed? And more importantly, what truth had he uncovered? Determined to dig deeper, Hai decided to explore the abandoned part of the village, the place the ghost had pointed to. It was said that years ago the old village was larger, but after the curse took hold, families fled, leaving behind empty homes swallowed by the forest. Many believed the ruins were haunted by restless spirits, cursed to repeat their final moments in eternal torment. Armed with only a flashlight and his recorder, Hai ventured into the overgrown streets. The air was thick with decay, and the silence was broken only by the crunch of dry leaves beneath his feet. Shadows twisted unnaturally in the corners of his vision, and every crack or whisper of wind made him jump. He entered the remains of a once grand house, its roof collapsed and walls covered with creeping vines. Inside, he found a dusty diary hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Its pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with the scrawled handwriting of the wronged official himself. Reading the diary, Hai learned the story of a man torn apart by betrayal. The official had been framed by jealous rivals, accused of treason and corruption he did not commit. Desperate to clear his name, he had sought out the village shaman for help, but instead became ensnared in a deadly trap. The shaman, corrupted by dark magic and greed, cursed not only the official but the entire village, binding their fates together in a cycle of pain and suffering. Hai's heart pounded as he read the final entry, a desperate plea. If anyone finds this, please break the curse. The truth must be known, only then can peace return. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the room, extinguishing his flashlight. In the darkness, a faint glow appeared, ghostly figures rising from the floor, their faces twisted in agony. Their voices a haunting chorus pleading for release. Panicked, Hai fumbled to turn the flashlight back on, but the spirits advanced, surrounding him with icy hands reaching out, whispering names, accusing, begging. He felt himself pulled between the living world and the shadow realm, his sanity slipping. Summoning all his strength, Hai shouted into the darkness, "I will find the truth. I will break the curse." The spirits paused, their cries turning into sorrowful silence. He fled the house, breathless, stumbling through the ruins as the first rays of sunlight finally pierced the forest canopy. But deep inside, Hai knew this was only the beginning. The curse was darker and more powerful than he ever imagined, and someone or something was watching, waiting for him to fail. Back in the village, Old Lamb greeted him with a grave expression. "You've stirred the spirits," he warned. "The curse fights to keep its secrets. You must be careful or you'll become part of its story." That night, as Hai prepared for sleep, a new terror awaited. His recorder, untouched all day, suddenly played back a chilling message, a voice not his own, whispering, "They see you, they know you, you cannot hide." The chilling message on the recorder haunted Hai long after it stopped playing. The whisper repeated in his mind, relentless, "They see you, they know you, you cannot hide." Sleep became impossible. Every shadow in his room seemed to twitch and flicker, and every creak of the old house sent a shiver down his spine. Determined to understand who or what was watching him, Hai ventured out into the village under the cover of darkness. The moon was a pale sliver, barely lighting the narrow paths and twisted trees. He carried only his recorder and a small flashlight, his senses heightened with every step. As he moved, he noticed strange symbols etched into the bark of trees and scratched into the wooden fences. They glowed faintly in the moonlight. Symbols that matched those on the ancient scroll and the diary. Suddenly he heard faint footsteps behind him, quick and light. When he turned, no one was there, only the rustling of leaves. A cold breath brushed against his neck, and a whisper sounded right beside his ear. "You're not welcome here." Heart pounding, Hai pressed on toward the village center, where an old shrine stood, half swallowed by vines. The shrine was dedicated to the shaman who had cast the curse. Locals rarely spoke of it, many feared even looking at it. At the shrine, Hai found a circle of stones inscribed with runes. As he stepped closer, the symbols flared with a ghostly light, and the air grew thick with energy. He raised his recorder and asked aloud, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The silence was broken by a chorus of voices, some angry, some pleading. The truth, they chanted, growing louder, echoing off the trees. Suddenly, a figure materialized from the shadows, a woman dressed in tattered robes, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Her voice was both sweet and terrifying. "You meddle in things beyond your understanding, mortal. The curse protects us. The Watchers will not allow the past to be unearthed." Hai, despite his fear, steadied himself. "I'm not here to harm. I want to free you all from this curse, from the pain." The apparition smiled sadly. "Then you must face the Watchers themselves. They guard the secrets. They are patient and merciless." Before he could react, a cold hand gripped his wrist, icy and unyielding. The forest seemed to close in, shadows swirling like smoke. Hai felt himself pulled into darkness, the whispering voices turning into screams. His last thought before losing consciousness was a desperate plea. "I must survive. I must find the truth." When Hai finally awoke, he found himself lying on cold, damp earth. The air was thick and heavy, filled with a chill that seemed to seep into his bones. He was no longer in the village, or anywhere familiar, but somewhere else entirely. A place where light barely touched and shadows moved like living things. The realm around him was an endless twilight, with twisted trees whose branches stretched like skeletal fingers toward a sky of swirling mist. Strange whispers filled the air, voices overlapping in a dissonant chorus that pressed on his mind. Hai struggled to his feet, every movement sluggish, as if the very atmosphere weighed him down. In the distance, ghostly figures flickered in and out of sight, some twisted in agony, others eerily still, watching silently. He soon realized he was trapped in the realm of the Watchers, spirits cursed to guard the secrets of the village, bound by the shaman's dark magic to remain trapped between worlds. Their sorrow and anger radiated like a storm, and their eyes followed his every move. Desperate, Hai called out, "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, cloaked being with glowing eyes that pierced the gloom. Its voice was like grinding stone. "You seek truth, but truth in this realm is a poison. The Watchers guard what must remain hidden." Hai's heart pounded. "I want to break the curse, to free you." The Watchers' gaze bore into him, cold and unforgiving. "Freedom comes at a price. To break the curse, you must face the darkness within yourself. Only then can you unravel the bonds that hold this village in torment." Suddenly, the ground beneath him cracked open, revealing scenes from the past, visions of betrayal, injustice, and the shaman's betrayal. Hai saw the officials' final moments, the false accusations, the curse being cast in a burst of dark energy. But with each vision came a voice, accusatory and demanding. "Are you worthy? Can you bear the pain of truth?" Hai staggered, his mind overwhelmed by the flood of emotions and memories not his own. Shadows twisted around him, whispering doubts and fears, threatening to consume him entirely. Summoning every ounce of courage, Hai focused on the faces of the innocent, the villagers trapped by the curse, crying out for release. He spoke aloud, steady but firm. "I accept the pain, I will bear the truth, I will not let darkness win." The Watchers seemed to pause, the oppressive atmosphere lightening slightly. The cloaked figure nodded slowly. then begin the journey back. But know this, the curse's final test awaits. The greatest darkness lies within. With that, the realm began to dissolve. Hai felt himself falling through shadows, hurtling back toward the waking world. When he opened his eyes, he was lying at the edge of the forest, dawn breaking on the horizon. Exhausted but alive, he knew the battle was far from over. The curse was not just a tale of ghosts, it was a mirror reflecting the darkest parts of human nature, and only by confronting those shadows could the village ever be free. Back in the waking world, the first light of dawn cast long shadows over the village of Tinh Nghiem, but Hai felt no relief. His body was battered, his mind weighed down by the horrors he had witnessed. The Watcher's warning echoed relentlessly in his head. The greatest darkness lies within. He knew what he had to do. The curse wasn't just a supernatural force. It was fueled by betrayal, hatred, and fear deeply rooted in the village's past and in himself. To truly break it, he had to face his own inner demons. Hai returned to the old shrine, clutching the ancient scroll and the diary. As the villagers watched silently from behind closed doors, he began the ritual described in the shaman's incantations. His voice trembled, but he pressed on, calling upon the spirits to release their anger and pain. The air grew electric, and the ground beneath him trembled once more. From the shadows, the ghostly official appeared. His face no longer twisted with rage, but calm, almost peaceful. "Thank you," he whispered. Suddenly, the ground cracked open, and dark tendrils of shadow shot toward Hai. They were the embodiment of the curse, hatred, fear, jealousy, all the emotions that had bound the village for centuries. They lashed out, trying to pull him into darkness, but this time Hai stood firm. He confronted each shadow with the truth he had uncovered, shining light into every dark corner of the past. He spoke aloud the names of the betrayed, the forgotten, and the innocent. One by one, the shadows shrieked and dissolved into mist. The Watchers gathered, their faces softening, their chains breaking. The oppressive weight lifted from the village, replaced by a fragile stillness. The ghostly official smiled faintly, then slowly faded, his spirit finally free. Exhausted but victorious, Hai looked around. The villagers began to emerge, their eyes clearer, their voices softer. The curse was broken. But as he turned to leave, Hai heard one last whisper, soft and almost a sigh, "Beware the darkness within." For it never truly dies. He knew the journey had changed him forever. Some shadows would always remain, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting. And in the quiet of Tinh Nghiem, as the sun rose high, the wind carried a final warning, one that no one could hear but those willing to listen.